All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're exploring the subtle energy body and really tuning in to those quiet signals our systems send us when something feels, well, just a little out of balance.
You know that feeling, right? Where you're restless but somehow totally exhausted at the same time? Or maybe it feels like you keep hitting the same invisible wall over and over again? Well, figuring out what that feeling is all about is exactly what we're doing here. So here's the core idea. We're not looking for some big, loud, flashing alarm. Not at all. Instead, it's about learning to listen to the whispers. The subtle patterns in our physical health, our emotions, and even our behaviors. This is all about compassionate awareness, not diagnosing yourself with anything. Okay, so before we go any further, let's talk about this word blocked. What do we even mean by that? It can sound kind of dramatic, but the reality is actually much more subtle. A blockage isn't really a dead stop. I want you to picture each chakra as a spinning wheel of energy. An imbalance just means that wheel is either kind of sluggish and underactive, or it's spinning way too fast, maybe pulling energy from other spots. Either way, the result is the same: disharmony in the system. So yeah, forget the idea of a clogged pipe. A much better analogy is a symphony that's out of tune, right? If one instrument is just a little too loud or a little too quiet, the entire piece of music is affected. That is the perfect way to think about your energy body. You're not broken, you're just a little out of harmony.
Let's start our little tour at the very base, with the root chakra. This is our foundation. It governs our sense of safety, our stability, and really our feeling of belonging here in the world.
So how does an imbalance here whisper to us? Well, physically, you might feel this deep fatigue that sleep just doesn't seem to touch, or maybe you have nagging issues with your lower back or your legs. Emotionally, it can be that constant, low-level buzz of anxiety about survival. Money, security, even when objectively things are fine. It's basically your body saying, hey, I don't feel safe.
Okay, from our foundations, let's move up into the sacral chakra. This is the center of our creativity, our pleasure, and our emotional flow. When the sacral chakra is out of tune, life can just lose its color. Emotionally, you might feel kind of numb, or the complete opposite, just totally overwhelmed by your feelings. And there's often this deep-seated guilt around just experiencing pleasure. Behaviorally, this is where we see things like creative blocks, or even addictive patterns as we start searching outside ourselves for that joy that should be flowing from within. Now we're moving up to the solar plexus, right in the upper abdomen. I want you to think of this as the engine room of our personal power, our self-esteem, and our ability to make choices for ourselves. This is a big one. It's one of the most frequently imbalanced chakras in our modern world. Physically, it often speaks through our digestion. You know that knot in your stomach? Emotionally, it's the voice of your inner critic, that feeling of just not being good enough, which can lead to perfectionism or a sense of being powerless. And behaviorally, it's that classic people-pleasing, that inability to set boundaries because you're afraid of what other people might think. Right at the center of the whole system, we find the heart chakra. This is the bridge between our lower, more physical chakras and our upper, more spiritual ones. It's our hub for love, compassion, and connection, both with others and, crucially, with ourselves. An imbalanced heart chakra often comes from deep wounds. Emotionally, it might show up as holding on to grudges, feeling lonely even when you're surrounded by people, or just finding it impossible to forgive. Behaviorally, we see people building these huge walls to keep others out, or, on the flip side, becoming totally enmeshed in codependent relationships. Our journey continues up to the throat chakra. This one is all about communication, self-expression, and having the courage to speak your authentic truth. The real issue here is often a disconnect between what you truly feel and what you actually say. You might have that constant feeling of a lump in your throat. Emotionally, there's this deep fear of speaking up. And behaviorally, this can go one of two ways, either staying totally silent when you desperately want to speak, or dominating conversations without actually listening to anyone else. Next, we come to the third eye, that space right between the eyebrows. This is the seat of our intuition, our wisdom, and our ability to see the bigger picture. An imbalance here often creates a conflict between your logic and your intuition. You might find yourself constantly dismissing your gut feelings, or, on the other hand, you could be so lost in abstract thoughts that you're just not grounded in reality at all. Emotionally, this all leads to confusion and a really deep distrust of your own inner guidance system. And finally, we reach the very top of the head, the crown chakra. This is our connection to purpose, to meaning, and to the universe as a whole. It's our sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves.
When the crown is out of balance, we just feel this profound sense of disconnection. It can show up as cynicism, a feeling that life has no point, or a kind of existential depression. Behaviorally, we might see a complete rejection of anything spiritual, or its polar opposite, something called spiritual bypassing, where we use lofty spiritual concepts to avoid dealing with our messy human problems.
So now that we've looked at each chakra by itself, it is absolutely crucial to understand that they don't operate in a vacuum. Nope. An imbalance in one area will inevitably always affect the entire system. It's like a domino effect.
Here's a perfect example of how that works. Let's say your root chakra is imbalanced, so you don't feel safe or grounded. Your system might try to compensate by making the crown chakra overactive. You might find yourself escaping into daydreams or deep intellectual rabbit holes because being fully present in your body just feels too threatening. You see? It's a coping mechanism.
So, after going through all these potential imbalances, I want to be really clear. The most important takeaway here isn't to judge yourself or rush to fix something. It's all about approaching this whole discovery process with compassion. And I really want you to let this sink in for a second. These imbalances, they didn't just pop up out of nowhere. They actually developed for really good reasons. Think of them as protective strategies, ways your system figured out how to cope with things you've gone through. So they're not flaws, they're part of your story. Honestly, they're proof of just how resilient you are. Look, the goal here isn't to achieve some perfect mythical state of perpetual balance. The real goal is just awareness. Simply noticing where your energy might be a little stuck is the first and honestly the most powerful step toward inviting it to move again. So the question I'm going to leave you with is this. What are your whispers trying to tell you?